Hi, everybody, and thank you for joining. It's good to be here. And I hope we find the next few minutes insightful. Sometimes I also hope so. So much of how a share comes is not really dependent on prep, but just on the energy. You know, if the head's working, if the energy is right. So each time before I start a share, I just ask for Hashem that energy be right, because otherwise it's quite a journey to tackle. So here's my question of the day. Who's the most dangerous person in the world? So you could think of a few people. Maybe the guy, the head of ISIS. If you're a bit left-wing, you'll say Donald Trump. If you're right-wing, you'll say the name of a left-wing politician. Maybe Julius Malema. I don't know. What would you say? But the truth is that all those answers are irrelevant. Why? Because the question is not who's the most dangerous. Because the answer is very simple. Me. I'm the most dangerous to myself. Nobody could hurt me the way I hurt me. That expression, I am my own worst enemy, is 100% true. And that is, nobody can hurt me the way I could hurt me. Some people could hurt me physically. Some people could hurt me financially. But the person who causes myself the most pain is me. The person who says the nastiest things to me is me. The person who is the most disheartened about me is me. Especially as adults. As children, yes, we need the affirmation of our adults to get a sense of self. But at some stage, we became adults. And it's all in our own head. Our entire universe and our entire life is created in our own head. And for me, one of the hardest things about growing up has been that idea, the concept to understand the principle, and that is that maturity is when you realize that you are the sole writer for your own book. And any factor that happens outside of you is simply an inspiration for your own story, but it's not your story unless you decide to make it your own. Let me explain what I mean. Somebody hurts you, somebody offends you, somebody says something nasty. What they did was wrong. What you do with it is totally your decision. If you decide at that moment to take it personally, if you decide to believe it, then it's no longer them. The words are out there. In other words, let's say I walk over and I say, you're an idiot. Please God, I'll never do that. Please, not only please God, I have to make sure I never do that. Sometimes in anger, we say stupid things that we regret. But let's say someone walks over to you and says, you're an idiot. Or you honestly, you can't, your life, you just can't get together. Now those words are hanging in the air. You might say it went straight into your heart and you didn't really have a free choice. But that's not true, because nobody can force words to enter your heart. You choose them. One of the principles of Judaism is that I have to be the guard of myself. In a few weeks' time, we read a parsha called Shoftim, and the parsha starts off that you should put policemen b'chol sharech in all your gates. And according to the commentaries, it doesn't only mean gates of cities, it means gates of the human being, your ears, eyes, nose and mouth, basically anything, any way that really things enter into your system. You have to be your own guard. No one's forcing you to see something, and no one's forcing you to listen to anything. And even if you heard it, doesn't mean you have to listen to it. In other words, okay, sounds went. Somebody said something nasty about you. But how, once it's gone here, you're deciding how much to allow it in, how much to penetrate, how much to affect your day. We often forget or don't appreciate how much power we really have over ourselves. You literally do not have to watch anything you don't want to watch. And you literally don't have to hear anything you don't want to hear. And you don't have to taste anything you don't want to taste. It's mainly the ears and eyes which really process. Think about it. Most of your information, if not all the information you're getting in this world, is through your ears and eyes. Close your ears, close your eyes. You're pretty much, the world is now outside of you. When I open my eyes and open my ears, that's when the world can suddenly enter me. And of course, as I said, the mouth and nose, but not nearly as powerful. What do I do with these two things in the back and two things in the front? What do I do with them? How much control am I having over them? Am I doing social distancing for them and distancing them from negative ideas? Am I making sure that my sanity is being protected? You know, I've been signing off a lot of messages the past few months, and recently all I find myself saying is stay safe, stay sane. Stay safe, stay sane. Because safe, yeah, it's very much decisions we make, but sanity is much harder decisions. Because we could decide how much nonsense to watch on social media. We could decide what nonsense to watch on TV. We could decide what conversations to be part of or not. But we're not all of us, many of us are not nearly as careful about staying sane and staying safe. Because if you set the goal of Corona, one of your goals, that you're going to walk out not only as sane as you walked in, but much more sane. In other words, much more grounded and holistic and wise than what you walked in. Then certain decisions have to be made during this thing to make sure that our sanity doesn't get lost, like family tensions and how to deal with them, or the media I'm consuming, or what I'm wasting my time doing, or what I'm filling my head with, or what stories I'm telling myself about myself. It's a much harder battle. As difficult as it is to fight Corona, which is an unseeable virus, it's even more difficult to fight the Corona of the mind, the virus of your mind, the ideas that come into your mind and let us lose it. So much of our pain in this world is based on bad ideas that we have about ourselves and about the world. I had an interesting interaction on Facebook last week with one of my relatives, going back and forth about pessimism, optimism, etc. And it's not it wasn't a massive insight for me. We've all seen it before, but it just reminded me this idea that some people are actually convinced that the world is coming to an end, and some people are not. And both of them have incredible facts to back themselves up. So the stories I'm telling myself about myself, I'll give you an example in relationships. Sometimes you hear about a divorce. Now, very often divorce is justified. Objective facts. Very often you wonder what actually went wrong. And let's play a hypothesis in our mind. Let's make an imaginative story. At some stage, she starts looking around and sees that her friend's husbands seem to be much nicer guys. Or she starts realizing how human this guy is. And then she starts telling, or he, about her. I'm just playing one side. She starts playing herself a story. And that story is, I deserve more. I don't deserve to have to deal with this no goodnik. I don't deserve to have to deal with this guy's compromised character. Now, again, I'm not talking about abuse. I'm talking about just a human being with faults. Now, that's a story we're telling ourselves. I don't deserve this. And I think many people around the world, 50% are ending in divorce. I don't think there's 50% abuse. I really hope not, that our world is really messed up. A lot of people are coming and saying, I deserve better. I don't need this in my life. I really don't need your nagging, and I really don't need your faults, and I really don't need your bad moods. I don't need this in my life. I was doing just fine without you. In other words, I give myself a narrative of what I need in life, what I don't need, what I deserve, what I don't deserve. And the other person is living in the exact same circumstance, and they're just not telling themselves the story. They're just saying, okay, I married a human being, has its days. Some days I want to kill him. As one person says, divorce is not an option, only murder. Um, and yeah, whatever. Yeah, it's not what I thought it was. Life never turns out to be that way. It's okay. It's only a story that's differentiating the two, but the life choices of those two people are going to be hugely different, even though the circumstances are very similar. Because of a story that I'm telling myself about those objective facts. So what story are we telling ourselves now about ourselves? What story are we telling ourselves about loneliness? What story are we telling ourselves about the whole world in lockdown? What are we telling ourselves about our financial struggles? What are we telling ourselves about the scenario we live in? And those stories have huge ramifications on our sanity. And I mean literally on our sanity. There are healthy stories and there are unhealthy stories. There are healthy narratives of life and there are unhealthy narratives of life, just like there's healthy eating and unhealthy eating. And most people, at least in today's day and age, have become at least sensitive, even if we don't necessarily eat healthy. We know what healthy food is and we know what it is. And we know when you sit there biting into a serious Danish or a roll, etc., you know that that's not the healthiest thing you could do. And you know that when you stuff your face with cheesecake or chocolate cake, it's not the best thing you do. Fine, you'll do it, but at least you know it. And many people have the discipline or the decision and they say they're not going to have that cheesecake or chocolate cake. But the question is, how many of us are actually aware about the information we're consuming and how dangerous it is to us? How many of us actually can say that is healthy and that is not healthy? That is giving me a healthy perspective on life and making me a softer, kinder, more forgiving person. And that narrative, however, is making me a bitter, angry, volatile, full of vitriol, full of anger and just hostility. Are we as careful in what enters the top part of our head to what enters the bottom part of our head? There's a famous story of one of the great, he was a great Hasidic Jew, lived 200 years ago, but at some stage he lost his marbles and literally, like he was a genius, but he was too clever for himself and lost himself, and he would just roam around the countryside, and certain times people would bump into him, and he, like in his madness, he would share wisdom. He was known as the Volper, the Volper. That was his surname out of the town he came from, etc. Hundreds of years ago. And the story goes that one time a group of Jews show up and they're sitting and they come to a Jewish inn, and they order a meal and then they start talking about the kosher. And they start, is this person kosher enough or not? Is it our standards? Is it not our standards? Etc. Checking your mail, checking the host and hostess up, trying to figure out who they are. And the Volper happens to be sitting over there in the corner on the stove, warming his bones, as it was in those days. And at some stage he screams out and says, "You're so careful about what comes into your mouth, and you're so not careful what comes out of your mouth. Kosher is not only what you eat, it's what you say." Basically, they were putting down the host, or they were just being a bit disrespectful of their fellow Jew. And he says, the mouth it goes both ways. You consume things and you put out stuff. What are we consuming and what are we putting out? If I was an energy, if I stopped seeing myself as a human being and I saw myself simply in a metaphysical term, I see myself as energy. I am an energy that God put into the world to put some kind of energy in her. The question I have to ask myself is, which energy do I add into the world? When I walk into a room, what energy do I bring with me and sets the tone? Is it the energy of calmness or stress? Is it the energy of forgiveness or for ripples? Is it an energy of self-righteousness or looking the other way? What energy do I walk in? Because we all walk into the room with an energy, whether it's in our own house, and even though it's the same person we're with the whole day, we walk into the room, and again, that person will, by the way, pick up our energy. Yes, we have different energies throughout the day. We're not static, we're not robots, but on general rule, if I would ask your kid, when mom or dad walks into the room, What energy do they bring in? What would they say? Is it an energy of calmness or tension? And if it is tension, why? Why am I so tense? What stories am I telling myself that I'm so tense about? Am I telling myself that I have to be perfect? Again, there could be a million different narratives. There could be stories that I don't even know what I'm telling myself. They're so subconscious. My mother told it to me and her mother told it to her, and I'm just playing games with myself. But ultimately, at some stage, we have to ask ourselves, what is the worst enemy to me? It's me. And I have to start protecting myself from myself. What does that mean? That means we're all born with a Yetzer Hara and a Yetzer Tov, an evil inclination and a good inclination. Or in the words of the Tanya, we're born with two souls, a godly soul and an animal soul. We are both people. We are the dysfunctional, broken, insecure little kid, and we are the successful, dynamic, colorful character. We're both of them. And the question is, at every moment, I have to decide which one of them will be me, because I'm not neither of them. I'm the third in a way. I'm the person who now has to decide, am I going to person A or person B? Am I choosing that story or that story? That book or that book? It's amazing how incredibly powerful human beings are and generous and kind, and how incredibly stupid and foolish we are. And often it's both within us. Sometimes within one day, I'll see incredible greatness within myself. And I'm not saying that with ego, I'm just saying like we all have potential for greatness, selflessness or forgiveness. And then 5 minutes later, I see the ultimate animalism within myself. Pure lack of self-discipline, whatever it is. Like, and you're like, how do I carry these two people? What's going on over here? Who am I? I'm both. But each moment, I'm being fought by two different characters who are trying to conquer me. Two characters are trying to control me. It's almost like two kings fighting for the same territory. And that's me. And the question is, who's going to win it? Because even if I win it for one moment, I could lose to the other side in another moment. I could be so generous and warm in a moment, and I could be so manipulative and vicious the next. Because the battle that I fought 5 minutes ago is a different battle than now. I see life. It's not my perspective, but that's the way I've taught it to myself to try to see it this way. That every moment I'm awake, I'm battling something. It's not an aggressive battle. It doesn't mean I have to walk around stiff. It means a battle's coming. A battle on my mind, a battle on my heart. Could I be kinder? Could I interact? The smallest little thing. You're walking down the shops during COVID. I don't know if you're going to the shops, you're not going to the shops. The doctor said, please to stay safe because the numbers are really going crazy over here. Whatever. And someone walks over to you and says hi. And you're not interested because you're just looking at your list. And you just give them a nod. But you know that if you've just looked at them and acknowledged them and even smiled behind your mask, it would make their day better. That was a battle. You might not even know that that wasn't a battle, but it was a battle. And I lost it because I took the easy route, but I didn't necessarily maximize the potential of the moment. And sometimes the right decision would be not to greet the person if I'm on an absolute rush for whatever reason, etc. I have to do what I have to do. But ultimately, every single moment I'm making a decision. Every moment how I'm spending my moment is a war. What's the right way to spend this time? On my phone, talking to a person, and it's not so absolute, let's all put our phones away and never, no, the phone has a role. And especially during this time, I think a phone with the right amount of usage keeps us sane. We interact with other people other than the people we're stuck with. Fine. But every moment it has to be a decision. Okay, now's a good time to be on my phone. Now it's not. But often we even forget we're in a battle. Happened to me last night. I had a very long day. Thank God a good day, but a long day full of interesting things. And suddenly I'm just winding down. I'm just going on YouTube and just YouTubing. And suddenly an hour passes. And I was like, 1 second. It's nice to be mindless for an hour. It's pretty cool. But like, it felt like for an hour, I didn't actually realize I didn't commit to say, now I'm going to give myself an hour. I thought I'm going to give myself 5 minutes, which turned into an hour. In other words, if I decided to allocate an hour now just to detox from the day, that's fine. But I didn't. I kind of said, I need 5 minutes to detox. An hour later, 1 second. Okay, now my whole night's ruined and my morning, etc. I forgot that I have the power to make decisions. Again, I'm human. We're all human. That's what we do. I promise you, I'm not crying bitter tears over what happened last night. But for me, it's just a very recent example of how often we forget the power that we have to make choices, the power I have over my own life. We are 99% of the factors of our unhappiness. We, not anybody else. I am 90% of the 99% of the factors of my happiness are based on my decisions. What I'm doing today, who I'm engaging, how I'm engaging with. And yes, certain things come at you from left field, they come as a surprise, they knock you out of your feet, etc. But even then, what do I do with it is again me. It backs to me. There's this incredible realization that bi hadavar tali, the things dependent on me. There's a famous story in the Talmud about a certain sage who went off the beaten path. I don't know why I'm telling stories today about good people who lost their marbles, but it looks like this one also. Rabbi Elazar ben Durdaya, this is a Talmudic story 1,800 years ago, 2,000 years ago. And he went off Yiddishkeit and he went and did every single sin possible. And the story goes that he one time heard about a illegitimate woman who was in a place, and he decided to go travel all the way across oceans just to find her. He was trying to be very dafka. And while he's with her, she utters this words, like somehow an inspiration that says, everybody comes to heaven besides Elazar ben Durdaya. And suddenly he awakens, he kind of jolts himself out of his madness that he's been in for a while. And the Talmud says that he starts calling out and he says, mountains, will you fight on my behalf? And that, no. Heaven and earth, will you fight on my behalf? No. Basically, he's trying to find different people to advocate on his behalf, or according to one of the commentaries, to blame his parents, or the society, the environment. And at some stage, we're told that he puts his head between his legs like this, and he cries and says, Ein hadavar tali alabi. The whole thing is dependent on me. It's only me. And he breaks down in such tears, and he literally died in that position, in that fetal position. And the Talmud finishes off the story that Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, one of the greatest, if not the greatest of those sages at the time, the author of the Mishnah, when he heard this episode, he cried and said how amazing it is that somebody could achieve, the world could come in just one moment. Yesh koneh olamo b'sha'ar achat. Somebody could conquer their entire world in one moment. Why? Because what did Elazar ben Durdaya need? 1 moment. And what was that 1 moment for? To acknowledge the problem is me. That is the single biggest realization in our life. It's the single biggest factor in our life is when we stop blaming, when we stop looking outwards, and we realize that nobody can hurt me other than me. Even the person who's hurting me, I'm deciding how hurt to be. Because never do I lose my choice. I could choose, even while I'm getting beaten, what story to tell myself. I could see myself as a victim, or I could see myself as empowered. No matter what happens to me, nobody has the right to define my narrative. And when we live in a world right now like Corona, which seems so mad, so out of our control, so overwhelming, and I'm talking to so many people, and so many people are reaching out saying how disempowered they feel, how angry they feel. It's at this moment that we remind ourselves, and are saying, with all the madness that's going around, and a world that we can never imagine, who is responsible for my headspace? Me. It's not Corona that's making me sad. It's me that's making me sad. It's not Corona that's making me angry. It's me that's making me angry, because I could choose how to see Corona. I could choose how to see my life. Nobody, nothing can make me angry. It's a very hard stance, what I'm saying. In other words, it's harsh to tell somebody, stop blaming, but ultimately it's the most liberating thing. It's so liberating to just know, okay, I have to work on myself. Because if I'm told that the whole power is within me, all I have to do now is discover it. I can't control you. I can't do anything about my enemies. I can't do anything about the people who are, hurting me in any way. But the only thing I could do is me. And if you tell me that I have 99% of the power in my life, it's so overwhelming, but it's also so empowering. Because that means I'm in control. That means that no matter what the circumstances is, it's my story. I don't care how miserable your mother-in-law or sister or child is. Nobody can make you angry unless you make yourself angry. Their behavior does not dictate your emotions unless you let it. It's hard work. I'll be honest, it's brutal work, because ultimately somebody sent something to you and it's so harsh that right away it gets to you. And now you have to work on yourself on, by the way, putting your defenses back on to sit there saying, okay, that was harsh, but 1 second, I have to regain control. And if it means I have to go lock myself in the room for a day, it's fine, but I'm going to engage with you only once I regain control. The problem is the stupid and sick things that happen in homes, miserable things that are said, happen in a moment of anger. When I lose control, it could be your fault that you started it. You said something really inappropriate or something really nasty, but then I blew the fuse and I got angry and then I lost my senses. And it has nothing to do with the other person. I don't care how aggressive he or she was. It's my story and I have to own it. A world in which people own their own feelings. Today, it's popular to sit there saying, oh my gosh, that offends me and that offends me and that offends me, especially in America. Everyone's feeling offended by what everybody else says. Nobody can get offended unless they choose to be offended. For example, let's say I'm walking down the street and I happen to hear two people talking about this Aftzan dude. Or, thank God that ever since I moved to this country, I've heard this 50,000 different pronunciations to my name. Avtzak, Avtzin, Avtzan, etc. It's Avtzin, 0 vowels, Avtzin. Now, we're walking down the street and oh, so that Avtzan gave a speech and it was totally off color. Oh my gosh, it was totally boring. Okay, let's say I hear that. They didn't know I was walking down the street. I heard it. Now what? I heard that information. Somebody was talking about me and they weren't saying something nice. Fine. But what am I doing with it? I could sit there saying, okay, people talk. I also talk about people. Fine, whatever, move on. I could tell myself, oh my gosh, and I thought that person was my friend. What a nasty, sick person that person is. But ultimately, what did they say? They just said my speech was bad. So what? We're not talking about, they didn't attack my character, my integrity. All they just said was my speech is bad. Fine. And I remember a wise teacher one time told me, he says, if you ever happen to walk into a room and someone's talking about you, don't confront them, walk out and stop listening. And I could say that quite a few times in my life, I've practiced that. I walk in to a space, somebody's talking, and instead of staying there just to get angry, allow myself to get more information, to get angry, I just walk out and I try to forget it. Because nobody owns me. I'm not available real estate, and neither are you. So that for me is my message today, because more and more I'm engaging with people who are feeling so disempowered, feeling like the world is taking them and controlling them. That 2020 is beyond our control. But let me remind you, 2019 had its own challenges and 2018 had its own challenges. I was thinking back to my 2019. 2019 is when I lost my dad. 2019 was a terrible year in the community, suicides and death, etc. Huge challenges. It was a different set of challenges. Yeah, it wasn't anything like the challenge of today. But if you think back, you also had huge challenges in 2019 as you had in 2018. What stories are you telling yourself about 2020? I'm getting bored of those memes that say, can we please plug out 2020 and plug it in again? No, it's by divine design. This is the way it is. 2020 is what it is. Now the question is, what am I in this scenario. In a perfect world with Corona, you know what I would recommend? I would recommend that each and every one of us starts writing a diary. Not a perfect world, an ideal world of our struggles during this stage. And then when we're finished, we have a book of our own resilience. Use this opportunity to dig inward. Use this opportunity to own more of our lives, to own the narrative. Use this opportunity to do incredible things. Because nothing and no one is in charge of us. Only Hashem. And Hashem gave us free choice. And he tells us, go live your life. I'm going to throw darts at you and I'm going to throw challenges at you. But I've also given you incredible power. And that credible power is to create stories. Because each and every one of us, no matter if we think we're good at fiction or not, we are storytellers. Each and every one of us is a storyteller. We tell ourselves a story about ourselves. We are the most important storytellers in the world because we're the ones that tell us stories about ourselves, not just some random nice novel, murder mystery, a romance. No, these are our stories that actually make a difference to our lives. And before a person sits down and writes a story, a professional writer, they have to know what they want to get out of this book. And as we're writing the story of our lives, we have to be clear. What do I want to walk out with this? Do I want a story that makes me feel empowered and thrilled and awake and engaged and motivated to fight another day in this world? Or do I want to live a life of victimhood and anger and woe is me and depression? So much is in our control. It's unbelievable how much of our life is in our control. It's a gift. It's a gift. Once a person passes away, they don't have any control anymore over their story. Their story has been written. Now it's just get the reward for the story you've done. But at every moment that we're alive, and please God, may there be many more moments like that, we are given the gift to create stories. And the ramifications of the stories that we tell are huge on ourselves, on our spouses, on our children, multi-generation, on our friendships. The difference between a nice person and a bad person, or a person who acts bad rather, is simply often all about the stories them telling themselves about themselves. And the difference between me being the greatest me I could be and me being very average is not about the skills or lack of skills that God gave me. It's about the story I'll tell myself. And please God, I should continue, or I should try, to tell myself stories about myself that make me a better person. Because ultimately, the only way to make this world a better place is when each and every one of us makes ourselves better people. And if 21 of us can make ourselves better people, just a little bit, on this Monday afternoon, just a little bit. And in no way am I saying that, most people might be much holier than me. But a little better, just a little better narrative tonight, it changed the world. Shkoyach, everybody. Thank you so much.